Growing up, I've always heard Gloria's name just because she's really important, to feminists. But I think I really started focusing on her when I read her work for the first time and was really mind blown. So I'm just really grateful for the opportunity to be able to speak with her. What everyday acts of rebellion do you commit to in your life?
Well, sometimes it's going around the corner to the deli and making them give me a paper bag instead of a plastic bag. Sometimes it's just saying no when you're supposed to say yes.
Yeah.
Or just we need to treat ourselves as well as we treat other people because we've been trained to forget.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
And what about you?
I've been starting to think of activism not just as organizing, but as self-acceptance. Just because women of color in particular receive so many messages that they shouldn't be comfortable in their own bodies. And I feel very comfortable with who I am and my identity. And it didn't used to be that way.
Why? Because what you saw in the media was
because
people
what I
who
saw
looked
in
different.
the media. But the way that it manifested was I straightened my hair, or I tried to make myself smaller, or I was shy, or I felt like I was taking up too much space. And it took kind of a very conscious unraveling for me to realize those things, and it was a very intentional act to accept yourself.
Yeah, and to seek out people you admire and identify with and hang out with them.
Yeah.
Right.
Like right now.
Right. Well, was there a time in your life when you thought, feminism wasn't for you?
I never did not identify as a feminist, but there was a point in time where I felt like I did not know where I belonged in feminism. Black women and women of color have been such a crucial part of feminism. They have been kind of swept over.
Well, it is divided on purpose.
Yeah.
The suffragist and abolitionist movements were united, and the kind of white liberal guys in Washington divided them consciously and said, okay, we'll only give the vote to black men because that's the fewest in number.
It's always like the oppressors who write history.
Yeah, well, you have to break through that. And explain that, first of all, you can't uproot one without the other. It just doesn't work.
Right. How have your fights for black liberation and feminism been intermeshed in your life?
I was afraid to speak in public. So I asked a friend of mine to speak with me. And actually, I was asking her in large part because I'm not married and I don't have children, so I thought, I would not be acceptable as a spokesperson.
Yeah.
And she was a child care expert and so on, but she was also African American, right? So we learned very fast that we both got audiences together that we wouldn't have separately. And that continued. So then Florence Kennedy became my speaking partner and Margaret Sloan became my speaking. So we were always traveling together.
So you must get really frustrated when people
I
call you a white
crazy.
feminist.
Well, I just say there's no such thing as white feminism. It doesn't exist. If it's white feminism, it's not feminism.
That's true. That's very true.
Yeah.
I feel like right now things are shifting so that feminism is getting broader and deeper, and I think people are more comfortable in identifying as non-binary.
You're right. I mean, we made up gender, we can unmake up.
Yeah.
We made up race, we can unmake up race. And it's the natural course of a movement, really, because at first, you're so influenced by culture that just to say a little thing seems huge. And then, it gets to be bigger and bigger.
Right.
And the same groups, talking about movements being connected, the same groups that are against abortion and contraception and so on are also against gay and lesbian, because they're against non-reproductive sex, if you know what I mean. Yeah.
I didn't think of homophobia as something that had to do with reproduction.
Yes, the adversaries of feminism and those movements are all the same.
Wow. And I'm also learning now that a feminist does not look like one certain thing because it can have such a much broader meaning than we think. And I used to think it just meant fighting for women's rights, but that's not all it is. It's so much more than that. It's about dismantling this entire whack system.
Well, the good news of being human is that we're adaptable. And so the species survives. But the bad news is that we're adaptable. So we've adapted to all these hierarchies and divisions and
Yeah.
But I do think, you know, it's like the world is divided into two kinds of people, those who divide everything into two kinds of people and those who don't. And I think that those who don't are growing in number. You know, we can't do it by ourselves. We need a group.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. It was fun. I really enjoyed it.